Welcome to Sacred Right, the podcast where we explore holistic living, the wisdom of ancestral traditions, and the path to deepening our connection with ourselves, one another, and the earth. Together, we will embrace wellness in all its forms and rediscover the sacred callings that guide us home. I'm your host, Amber Young, and in this episode, I sit down with one of my dear sisters, Cassidy, to share her powerful journey of reclaiming her health through holistic biological dentistry. After years of struggling with mysterious chronic health conditions, she discovered a hidden culprit, her root canals. Despite reassurances from conventional dentists that everything looked fine, she later learned that her 20-year-old root canals were deeply infected and silently impacting her health. Right now, millions of people are living with chronic illness, and this is a really big number, but 1 in 4 cases may be linked to an oral infection. This can be often overlooked as a factor in degenerative disease. By 2025, it's projected that nearly half of the United States population will have a chronic health condition. And there are countless root causes, right? We've got poor diet, nutritional deficiencies, chronic stress, just lifestyle imbalances in general, and loads of environmental toxins. But today we're going to explore that our dental health can be one of those root causes keeping people sick. In this episode, we'll dive into the hidden dangers of root canals, the ways they can quietly impact overall health, and the holistic steps Cassidy took to prepare for, undergo, and heal from her root canal removal surgery. Her story is one of resilience, wisdom, strength, and mostly hope. A reminder that healing is possible when we seek the root cause. If you or someone you love has had a root canal, my hope is that this conversation offers you strength and knowledge and courage to take charge of your well-being. Let's begin. Hi, Cassidy. Welcome to episode 1 of the Sacred Right podcast. I'm so thrilled to have a sister like you doing this with me and being willing to talk about your experience. I'm so excited to share your story with the world about root canals. And so can you share a bit about your history, your dental history, and what led you to get root canals at the start of your experience, and then everything you've learned from these root canals?
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor. And yeah, this has been an incredibly vulnerable and humbling experience for me with my root canal story. It's been a life journey for sure. Before I get too far into the conversation, I really want to preface that I'm not a doctor and I don't have any formal or educational background in dentistry. This is just a personal story, and I'm just going to share through my own experiences and the research that I've done, and which has been absolutely profound. And so I really want to underscore the importance of this conversation too, because root canals are such a common dental procedure, and it's so common that most people just go along with it without thinking twice. And I want this conversation to be that pivotal point for someone to maybe rethink their decision on how they can handle a dental procedure moving forward for their health. Like I said, root canals are one of the most common dental procedures, and I believe that they can be compromising our health in ways that we don't even fully comprehend yet. And as you listen to this episode, I really want to invite everyone to just approach it with an open heart, because for me, it took me a long time to confront this issue. It's such a deep-rooted issue, and it's an expensive issue to fix. And it required me to really look at myself in a new way and have courage and bravery to make the necessary changes that I had to make. And so I also want to say, if you're dealing with a dental issue or you currently have root canals, know that this information is meant to inspire and empower you, not to instill fear. And, that we all have the right to heal and grow and explore. And I trust that you're here listening to this because it's the perfect time. So with that, my story is that in the third grade, I was on the playground. It was winter. And I was having a snowball fight with some friends, and I was running away, and I turned around to look at where my friends were. And by the time I came back forward, I hit a metal bar on the playground, which led to my two front teeth being knocked in half. And later on, not to get too far into my childhood trauma, but at the time, my mom was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I was living with what would be my foster parents. So they didn't have any proper way to get me medical help. So it took me months to get dental work done after the injury. And that led to my two front teeth actually dying and quote unquote needing root canals. And I got my permanent crowns put on my sophomore year after getting braces. And over the years, I've experienced several health issues that I now firmly believe were rooted in the root canal infections that I had occurring in my mouth throughout a 20-year period. It was a really long period for me. And what that looked like was I had chronic strep throat growing up, which led to me ending up getting my tonsils taken out at the age of 15. I had severe cystic acne all over both of my right and left cheeks, down my neck, over my entire back. I have dealt with severe eczema over my hands and necks and my eyes, and had GBS, autoimmune disorders. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. I had ocular migraines, which, if you don't know what an ocular migraine is, it's actually pretty scary. You lose vision in either one or both of your eyes. And for me, my ocular migraines resulted in vomiting for several hours and being just completely down for days. And, other health issues that showed up throughout the years that I firmly believe were connected to my dental problems because of the infection that was happening. And the thing about these sort of infections is this bacteria can pass the blood-brain barrier, which can lead to chronic degenerative diseases over time. And the question that I just kept asking myself in my middle 20s, I would say, was, how many health issues have stemmed in my life from my mouth? And my why on wanting to get my root canals taken out and the implants put in was I had my daughter, my first daughter, and I knew that I wanted to get pregnant again. And I didn't want to have something in my body that could be causing these serious health issues during my second pregnancy that I could potentially give to my second child, which I'm currently pregnant again. So this path has been very fruitful for me. It's definitely a success story. And, the dangers of root canals can be very serious. They can pose really serious risks to our health. And dentistry in itself is unique because it's one of the only medical fields, maybe the only medical field, that is unique in its acceptance of leaving a dead part of your body in place and believing that it's fine. So this practice can lead to severe health issues. If your appendix ruptures and it's dying, if a doctor knows that if you leave that in your body, you're going to die. You have to get surgery to get that removed. You can't just leave a dead organ in your body thinking that it's going to be fine. And there's really no difference in our teeth. So it's quite absurd that dentists believe that you can leave a dead part of your tooth in your body and nothing's going to happen to it. So again, if you have a root canal, it's not your fault. And if you're experiencing health issues because of it, it's also not your fault. I took on so much guilt and shame. Shame is like the lowest frequency you can ever experience. So much shame over the health issues that I had because of these root canals. And so I really just want to instill hope that it's not your fault. You haven't done anything wrong. And if there's one thing you can take away from this is it's crucial to not wait for a health crisis to occur before you make a change. And that's really where I was coming from is I didn't want to have another health crisis to make a change. Like I don't want my body to have to scream at me for me to do something for it. I want to be able to listen to the subtle whispers of my body, the small symptoms that are showing itself, the messages that are coming through what my body is trying to tell me. And it's very upsetting because 1 in 4 people are chronically sick because of an oral infection, and that, like I said, can lead to significant degenerative diseases throughout time.
Yeah. And that's like a huge problem in our society because so many people they're doing what they're told to do, right? They're doing what they're told to do by these experts that they trust, right? That we trust. A lot of people trust their dentist and trust the doctors and will just kind of follow orders and follow suit to these practices that just have been kind of repeated over time. And so I'm just so glad that we're talking about this because I hope too that this really inspires people to take their health into their own hands like you have. Your journey has been so inspiring, and I just can't wait for people to kind of just learn about the whole thing. Like a lot of people are probably like wondering, what is a holistic biological dentist? And like my curiosity too is what inspired you? So I'm hearing you talk about you've had a lot of chronic illnesses kind of arise or just mysterious things that have plagued you in ways over the years since you've been really young. And for someone being your friend, I know that you take such amazing care of yourself and you're so mindful about what you consume to products that are in your home and all of that. And so I'm sure it was feeling really just defeating because even when I had met you, I think when I first met you, you weren't eating eggs and you weren't having milk products and you were having eczema flare ups. And yeah, and I know you've done so much work as you're calling in the spirit of your second child, which is so amazing that they're here. But you've been really like wanting to flip everything. So I'm curious, how did you find out about a holistic biological dentist? And yeah, how did you then learn that your root canals were maybe the root of some of these problems you've been experiencing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To unpack that more, I went to the same dentist. I actually worked in the dental field, Amber, for 5 years from when I was 17 to 22. So I had the in with dentists and doctors and really trusted what they said. And I was in the field. That's what I did when I got out of high school. And it's interesting because I went to the same dentist for several years, loved him. He was great. I trusted him with everything, got, the discounts or whatever for being a long-term patient there. And I listened religiously to this podcast, Darren Olian's Super Life podcast is what it's called now. And several years ago, I think back in 2018, he had a podcast come out with Dr. Jerry Tennant. I think it's called The Voltage of the Cells in Our Body. And he talks about root canals and how root canals are killing the voltage in our body, and goes on about the different symptoms. And that was the first time that I put the 2 and 2 together and kind of made the links of, maybe my health issues are actually related to my root canals that I got when I was 11 years old, or, I think it was in the 3rd grade, however old you are in the 3rd grade. And it really started to make a lot of sense to me. But at that time, I was not ready. I think I was 22 years old. I was not ready to hear that information because it's scary. It scared the crap out of me to hear that. Because what? I'm just going to get my 2 front teeth pulled out of my skull? No, not when I'm 22 years old. Like that seems like a preposterous thing to do at that age. And so I listened with an open heart, but I just wasn't fully ready to receive the information. And I didn't do anything with it at that point in time. And I sat on it for a really long time. And I ended up doing several different other things. The celery juice cleanse, did the whole medical medium thing for 6 months, was vegan for 10 years. And, all of that helped extremely because you're lowering your toxic load and your heavy metals and all that stuff. And it helps your body to more so balance the infection that it's constantly fighting, so that that load that your body's taking on has been lessened. But what really set it off for me was I watched the documentary Root Cause last year, and it was last February of 2024. And I watched it and on Unified TV. And I had my husband sit down with me because I knew this was my next step in my healing journey. I've done everything else, changed the products that I use, to the food that I eat, to the clothes that I wear, to everything. As you know, you're very similar in that way. And I told my husband, I said, okay, this movie came out and I need to watch it, and I need you to sit down next to me and hold my hand because I'm scared. I'm so scared. And I cried through the whole movie, but it was so empowering for me because and I highly recommend you, if you are interested or if you have root canals and you want to know what to do, just sit down and watch the movie. Pause this podcast, forget about the podcast, go watch the movie, because or it's not even a movie, it's a documentary. That'll give you everything you need to know. It'll empower you. It'll tell you it'll tell you everything that I'm about to explain here in this podcast as well. And that's really what moved me forward, with the help of, wanting to call in my second baby. And so just really being that pure vessel for my child to come through, and just knowing that I am doing everything that I can to make sure that my body is as healthy that I can be, and that I can live for as long as I possibly can for my children. I want to live a long, happy, healthy life for my husband, for myself, for my family, for my kids. And what's scary is these root canals, like I said, cause chronic degenerative diseases. I don't want to be getting Alzheimer's when I'm 60 or 70 years old and forgetting my children's name like my grandma did to me. That's not fun, but this is what we're dealing with in these days and ages. And it's not okay with me. I'm not just going to sit back and have it happen. So I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that I don't fall victim to these dental practices that are so normalized. And to go back to the dentist that I saw for several years, I listened to that podcast and I said, okay, I'm just going to go have my dentist check me out. Amber, I was cleared. They took a regular panoramic x-ray. They did a cleaning and whatever other studies they do. And they said, no, your mouth is perfect. Your gums are completely healthy. You have nothing wrong with you.
So when you went in there, did you inquire? This was after watching the documentary, and then you inquired about, like, there's no infection. So
this
you're
wasn't
saying
after watching. This was back when I was 22. So this is after
okay.
I listened to Darren's podcast with Dr. Jerry Tennant.
Okay, then you got cleared.
Yeah, I wasn't fully ready. And, that's part of the issue for me back then, is it was like, I just wanted a quick out. I wanted someone to tell me, hey, you're fine, and to walk away from it and to never look at it again.
Yeah, so that's like confirmation bias. You're like, okay, yep, I'm fine. So I'm going to just keep living my life, even if I know that it could be a problem. I heard the podcast. I'm going to look into this later, maybe.
Exactly. Or deeper later. But for right now, I just need a quick surface answer. And I got that. And that was my hope. And so why I'm sharing this is because a regular dentist is not going to cut it in figuring out if you have a root canal infection. It is so important and crucial to find a holistic biological dentist near you. And you can find a holistic biological dentist near you on the International Academy of Biological Dentistry and Medicine website. We'll link that here in the show notes for you, so that you can just click the link, type in your zip code, and find the closest one to you. That's what I did. That's how I found my current holistic biological dentist. That's where I've gotten all of my procedures through. They're amazing, and I'll go through my experience with them. I can't recommend my holistic dentist more. I absolutely love her. But, the thing about root canals that I want to go back to is they can harbor extremely dangerous bacteria. And this includes the streptococcus virus, which is something that I've dealt with my whole entire life. Like I said, I had to get my tonsils taken out when I was 15. It includes the spirochete bacteria, which is one of the most high risk bacteria that you can have. It passes the blood-brain barrier. The trichomonads, I'm not even sure if I'm saying that one right, gliding rods and amoeba, like these are all very extremely dangerous bacteria that you don't want anywhere near your brain and or your sinus cavity. And so, according to the American Association of Endodontists, there's over 15 million root canal procedures that are performed annually. Every year, there's 15 million root canal procedures that are performed. That is insane to me. And the amount of people that have more than one root canal, like I had two, I think my mom has four. I mean, can you imagine what's going on in there and for her body? And Amber, a little bit about my mom's story is she's going through some very extreme health issues right now too.
Right. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah,
So you attribute that probably to her four root canals?
yeah, 1,000%. And
Does she feel inspired after your story to see a holistic biological dentist?
yes, my mom is actually seeing, praise the Lord, the same
Yes.
dentist that I am, and she's getting help through them, which is really great through this experience. So I'm really excited and proud of her. And I'm proud of anybody who goes on this journey because, like I said, it requires courage and it requires bravery beyond what you can imagine. I mean, these are teeth, right? This is our smile. This is what generally represents who we are as a person. And it's one of the first things that people notice about someone when you meet them is, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they smiling? Are they enjoying the conversation? And it has a lot to do with our mouth. Our mouth is very important in socially. And so, it's a very scary experience for someone to go down.
I can only imagine, Cassidy, just hearing your experience. I'm like, because man, oh man, I'm just how hard to be like a child and having to deal with what you did in the third grade and live. I heard you say you were a sophomore in high school when you got the permanent crowns. So then you had to deal with whatever that was. And that just has, yeah, it has a ripple effect on your whole self esteem and your being and all of the things. And so there's just so much there. And so you're so right. Like, I think it's so hard for people to really look at this deeper because it does take a lot of courage. It's your mouth. And I feel like when I'm feeling like my life feels out of control or chaotic in any sense, then I dream about losing teeth.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like and that's a common thing, right?
Yeah.
When people feel like out of control in their lives, it's common to dream about losing teeth. And those dreams are always really jarring for me. And so I can only imagine really like in real time being like, okay, they're going to fully take out my two front teeth and I'm going to have none of that there. Even if I already have permanent crowns, it's like a whole nother process of taking your crowns off and doing all of that. That is just, it's so much. But yeah, your bravery is so inspiring. And you were so cute the whole time, even when you were able to take the two out and you had like the hole. And it was like, I'm sure you were able to tune back into your 9-year-old self, which is how old you are in third grade, and really tune into like when you're losing your teeth and you don't have your teeth and like that little girl, Cassidy. And did you do any of that work? Did you go back to your child self?
Yeah, I had to reparent myself a lot through this process. And it was so helpful for me to have a 2-year-old daughter to go through this journey with because she brings in that childlike nature for me. And I look at her and I give her exactly what I didn't receive as a child from my parents. Both of my dad left when I was 2, which is her age now. And my mom was a drug addict and alcoholic up until I was 13 years old. And I, went from home to home until finally finding my guardian angels. And they kept me till I was 13 years old till my mom got clean. And, to paint that picture, yeah, from the third grade until my sophomore year in high school, I went with half of my front teeth. So my two front teeth were shorter than the teeth next to them, and then shorter, obviously, than my canines. And so when I smiled, it was not attractive. It didn't look pretty. And I was the person that wouldn't ever want to smile in conversation. And when I did, I would always cover my mouth. Like I'd ha 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 ha, I'd cover my mouth because I wouldn't
Cassidy.
want anyone to look at my teeth. And my two front teeth were dead. So they were brown and black. They weren't attractive looking. So my sophomore year in high school is when that was fixed. My self-esteem was so belittled, and it was rare for me to feel confident in anything that I was doing. And my sophomore year in high school, I really felt like I blossomed into a different person. And that's when I really noticed how important our smile and the health of our mouth truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that I was running from a traumatic program. I just thought this was my personality and this is who I am. I'm shy. I'm not introverted. I don't really want to have friends, and I don't want to laugh at people when they make a joke. I just thought that was who I was. And so, to be halfway through high school and to experience that was just trauma and embarrassment and shame running that program versus, I got to discover myself in a whole new way. And so to decide consciously when I am 29 years old, because I'm 29 now, I was 28 when I got my two front teeth taken out, I believe. To decide when you're 28 years old to go back into one of the most traumatic periods of your life willingly and consciously, and to know that you're going to sit in a dental chair and feel the tug and the pull of someone ripping your two front teeth out of your skull, and to hear the cracking. I'm not trying to turn anybody away from this, but to consciously choose to do that, it took a lot of reparenting work. I had to really look at myself and love on myself. And my daughter was the perfect conduit for me to get to do that, because she just brings in that sweet childlike nature. And I love her so much. And so I was able to come back to myself in a way. If I didn't have my daughter, I don't think the reparenting process would have been as graceful as it was for me, because you get to use your children, or I got to use my daughter in this way that was really powerful for me. So yeah, it was very intense, and I thank the Lord that I have such a wonderful husband too, to hold my hand. And I've posted on Instagram several times of pictures of me smiling without my two front teeth. And I decided to do that just from a place of healing. And it's like, yeah, I want to be freaking witnessed in this. I want people to see me without my two front teeth, because you know what? If they do, then the fear of everything else is going to dissipate, because it's no longer going to hold power over me. I'm not going to have this feeling of wanting to hide. And it makes me cringe. I lived my life in the youngest parts of myself. When I went through puberty, that was the energy that I was in, of wanting to hide. And I really just wanted to consciously choose to make a different decision, and I didn't want to hide. So I posted videos and pictures, and you can go on my Instagram right now and see me without my two front teeth, just having a fun time, just enjoying the process, and knowing and breathing into the fact that it's temporary, because we get to live in such a wonderful time where we can get implants and we can get fake teeth put on that look like real teeth, and it's no different. So yeah, just really reminding myself that it was temporary, and yeah, wanting to be seen and witnessed, which is also part of the rite of passage process. And it's really important to be witnessed in the initiation phase. So that was my intention with that.
Yeah, I loved hearing you talk about how this experience has been like a rite of passage for you and in the reclamation of your health. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just been so beautiful that you were able to take that opportunity and use it to really be witnessed and seen in your experience. Because, yeah, it required a lot of bravery. And I will say, you look so cute with the two front teeth gone, Cassidy. So cute. And it was so funny and so
Well, thank
fun and lighthearted. And yeah, I can't even imagine going through what you did at such a young age, at such a vulnerable time in life. And I know this well because I work with kids that age and I see it in them when they're trying to create identities and fit into peer spaces. And I see it with kids who even still wear masks at school to this day. And to me, it's a self conscious thing. I know it's not just about protecting from illness, right? Which is like what these children that I teach, that's been indoctrinated, ingrained into them because of living and going to school at a time during COVID-19 and the masks being such a big part of our culture in that time. And I see how it's really impacted these kids because they hide behind these masks. And it's really heartbreaking to me because there's deeper things going on there. And like when you were a child, you probably would have been like, great, this is a time we can wear these masks. Now I feel a
I
part
would
of
have
everyone
loved
else.
that.
Yeah, like felt more in with community. There's so much to unpack there. But yeah, your work has been so beautiful, Cassidy. Your transformation, the person that you are, the person you have stepped into. You're such a beautiful, inspiring, and so much self esteem. And I wouldn't even have known any of this before, talking to you about this past because I'm familiar with your past in this. And I would have no clue. And when I did have no clue, I was like, wow. It made me fall in love with you even more for the person that you have really stepped into. I can get emotional thinking about that.
Well,
Yeah. And I'm sure people want to hear more about the treatment and just the whole experience with the biological dentistry and how they assessed your root canal infection and saw that there was all that bacteria being harbored that the regular dentist wasn't able to pick up on, right? The more conventional style dentistry, they didn't see it as a problem. But then when you saw this biological dentist, you were seeing all these bacteria that are super harmful. And like you mentioned a couple of times, passing the blood brain barrier, which, is just does so much on the body. And so, what did that look like as when you saw them and how did they talk you through that there was a problem? And then what was the procedure like?
yeah, this is probably going to be my favorite part of this conversation because this is going to be the solution oriented part. Okay. So, back to the bacteria. Like I said, these bacteria can cause serious infections in the body to the point where they will eat away at your bone. And that was what was happening to me on my right side of my front tooth. It was eating away at my bone. If I would have let it happen for another 20 years, it probably would have eaten its way to my sinus cavity. That's what I'm talking about of like these serious infections that can occur. And the teeth are porous and contain thousands of microscopic channels. And when a tooth undergoes a root canal procedure, it's really not a question. It's really not a question of if your root canals are going to become infected. I really want people to understand that. It's a matter of how severe your affection currently is and will become over time. And so, what I want to talk about is how I understood and felt and honored within my body that there was something wrong, even though years prior, a dentist told me that my mouth was perfect and that I had no infection, and how I gained the confidence to go against standard medical advice and tap into my intuition. And so it wasn't until I started, and this is going to sound gross, but this is the truth. It wasn't until I started noticing a strange smell, honestly, coming from my crowns when I flossed my teeth. And I would also start to experience almost this super subtle pulsating sensation in my teeth before bed that I realized, okay, something is going on here. This isn't normal. I'm not feeling this anywhere else in my mouth. And it just so happens to be in my two front teeth where I have experienced significant trauma and had root canal procedures. And I've listened to these podcasts talk about the dangers of it, where I really kind of decided, okay, I'm going to find different information. I'm going to find different avenues, and I'm going to figure out what's wrong, because there is something wrong. To have a strange smell coming from your teeth, especially when you floss, means that there's something underlining that is going on. There's bacteria being harbored, or you just need to get better dental hygiene practices. But either way, you still need to take some action to get your dental health in line. So despite being completely cleared of infection and dismissed, honestly, I felt like I was dismissed by my standard dentist. I just knew that I needed to explore further. And that's why I had my husband sit down and watch that root cause video with me. So I watched the video and I started my search for a holistic biological dentist. And when you see a holistic biological dentist, they will do a series of alternative tests on your body to see if you have an infection. And one of them is a comb beam CT scan. It's called a CBCT scan. Try to say that 5 times fast. And what that does, it's a digital panoramic x-ray of your mouth. So it's completely different than a regular x-ray that you would get at a regular dentist office. They also do pH testing of your mouth. They do plaque analysis, which was one of my favorite things that they did, because they take a sample of your plaque and they put it under a microscope. And that is honestly, I remember seeing the spirochete bacteria, the gliding rod bacteria, the white blood cells in my plaque sample, and sitting in that chair and watching all of those wiggly worms glide across the screen. That's when I knew, okay, there's no going back at this point. I literally see the bacteria that causes Alzheimer's, that causes MS, that causes Parkinson's. I'm seeing it live. It's in my body, and my bacteria levels are high. It's severe. Like, they're telling me this is one of the worst cases that they've seen. And, like I said, I had my root canals for 20 years at this point. So of course it's going to be, they've had 20 years to just party on in my mouth and eat away at my bones. So my CBT scan also revealed, on top of the plaque analysis, also revealed that I had a severe infection in my root canals, more so in my right. And my right was the one that I could feel more of the pulsating sensations at nighttime, and that it, spread into my jaw. So I had this intuitive feeling that something was wrong. And here's my definitive proof that what I was feeling, my intuition was correct. And so if you're feeling that something is off in your body, I don't want you to stress yourself out in trying to make yourself believe that you're right, but don't just stop at the first, no, you're totally fine. Maybe you just find like 2 other recommendations from someone else just to make sure, and definitely see a holistic biological dentist so that they can verify with a CBT scan, with the pH, testing strips, and with the plaque analysis. Because there are some people that will have root canal infections, or that will have root canals and not have an infection yet. So that's the main point. Yet. It's really not about if you have an infection, but when is it going to occur and how severe is it going to be? So, like I said, my infection was eating away my bone, and I had the spirochete and the gliding rod bacteria. And I believe the spirochete bacteria is what was behind my ocular migraines, because at that point, the spirochetes can go through the BBB, which is the blood-brain barrier, and affect vision. And so, I was going blind in one or both of my eyes. And it was scary because one time it happened while I was driving, and there was nothing that I can do other than wait for it to pass. And that's not a way to live. Every time I got into the car, I would say a prayer, please make sure that nothing weird health-wise happens. And I would get ocular migraines probably 4 times a year. And it's been a year now since I've gotten my root canals taken out, and I haven't had an ocular migraine since. And I know that I never will have one ever again, because I've got to the root cause of it. And so Yeah, these bacteria can just cause really severe, significant neurodegenerative diseases, like I said, like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And so seeing that bacteria was the revelation for me and the turning point for me. Seeing that live bacteria under a microscope is a pretty significant deal. And, I would just make sure that if you see a biological dentist, a holistic biological dentist, that you ask for the plaque samples. I ask for one at every cleaning that I have now, just because I want to be sure that I'm doing things right and that bacteria is not coming back and that my body is cleansing and detoxing in the way that it needs.
Wow, that is wild. I bet it was really quite the experience to see these bacteria wiggling and moving across the screen. And I've seen images of it. And I know people go to your Instagram and they go to your root canal stories. They can also see an image video of the bacteria moving. And I guess I would just feel really affirming on another end. Like, it's like, wow, that's scary and creepy and gross. And also, I knew it, right? I knew that I felt this throbbing in my teeth. I smelt something off. And yeah, the pieces just start fitting together. And yeah, from everything you experienced with the ocular migraines and all the different health issues, like I'm sure everything just kind of, it was like a light bulb of, wow, okay, this might be, I finally figured out one of these puzzle pieces, even if it's like, okay, there could be others potentially still work out, because we are living in such a high toxic world. And there's so much we have to deflect and work through when it comes to reclaiming our health, because there's so many things that just cause us to be unhealthy and diseased. And there's so much money made off of people being sick. And it's hard to think, okay, well, clearly this information's out there, right? These holistic biological dentists, like you named a whole organization where you could go on their website and you can find these people, but clearly they have the info, and that you listen to this podcast and there's this documentary out there. But man, if I did not know you, I would have no clue. And maybe, of course, I saw the unified ad come up on my phone, but you have to follow these things and be on that path and kind of in the alternative health realms, right? The quote unquote alternative health realms, which is like the realm we all need to be stepping into to really have this reclamation in our own health. But yeah, it's just, I would have had no clue. So I'm just so glad to be having this conversation. So hopefully it will maybe make a light bulb go off to people who listen, who might have had a root canal procedure done. And maybe they're not feeling the implications or having chronic issues come up yet. But like you said, it's not a matter of when, it will happen.
And to that point, it took about, I would say, 18 years for symptoms for the strange smell and the pulsating symptoms, the very location oriented symptoms to occur. I had all those other, health issues pop up throughout life that I know were significantly related to the root canals. But to have that location of it being in my mouth and feeling the sensations in my mouth, it took about 18 years for that to actually occur. So it takes a while. These things aren't overnight. And bless the holistic biological dentists for those that are in practice and taking on this mission, because they really are going against mainstream medical Western medicine. I mean, they're really doing things that are honestly pissing a lot of doctors off, a lot of dentists off. And it's really powerful with what they're doing. So bless them and their life's journey and their work.
So many of the conventional dentists are probably just feeling jarred, right? Because clearly you get into dentistry because you want to be of service in some way to humanity and people and take care of people's oral health, right? So the intention is really a beautiful intention. And to find out that maybe you've been doing procedures that you were taught that this is the way we go about, and this is the medicine of our time, and this is the research of our time, and to kind of go into, oh, wow, I might have been causing harm when my intention was to do good and to be of service to people's oral hygiene. It's a lot to live with and feel into. And some people wouldn't want to look at that, right? Some dentists, it goes against everything they've learned. And we can see the mirror impacts in our own, like if we talk about the Western medical world, it's like we see that in the more naturopathic, herbal, holistic realms, acupuncture, like you see that almost like people talk about how it's, and I don't like using this term, and I don't use this term, but a lot of people use this term, is they call it woo-woo stuff, which
Mm-hmm.
is so fascinating to me. I'm even baffled at myself it's coming out of my mouth because I really try not to use that term ever because I'm like, well, these are healing modalities that humans have been doing since for so long, right? All these different quote unquote more alternative ways of approaching, degenerative diseases or anything going on health wise. And so to hear it be called woo, it's like, whoa, no, this is like ancestral wisdom and knowledge. And so we're seeing things come up in our time because we're living as a people, as humanity, in such a different way than we've ever lived, right? From all the plastic and all the glyphosate and food and just the toxic load. And so it's just like feeding these infections more. It's just wild to see, like, we're just coming to this end of like, yeah, people are, I feel like now starting to be more open-minded to these more alternative ways of healing because of all the chronic issues people are facing. And it's really in lifetime because people are looking at it now because they're experiencing it. I know so many people in my life experiencing chronic health issues from things going on in the gut, the skin, all these things are showing us that something is off. And so we really need to collectively approach these things. Like if we know things are bad, my mind is always like, oh my gosh, if we know this is bad, why is it legal? But it's like crazy because so much out there, as you know, is just presented as safe. And it is so not safe. And it's just like, our politicians, right? It's like not addressing these things and kind of, of course, we all know about like lobbying interest, or if we don't know, maybe that's a seed that can be planted, right? That there are all these lobbying interest and all this money and like all this, yeah, hiding, covering up. But I'm just so curious of all the, maybe as we know in the pharmaceutical realm, there's a lot of people who try to hide that things are bad or procedures are bad and cover it with the money and feed it into the research and to get the outcomes that they want the people to believe. And it's just wild to me. And like, I'm just so curious about what is being done in the dental realm because there's a lot of money in that realm too, just because it is a part of the medical realm of how much is being like, hidden and covered up and not willing to be, held accountable or for it to be looked at deeper. And I was curious as you were talking, I looked up quickly, when did root canal procedures start? Like I was curious about the history of root canals because obviously the history of dentistry does not go that deep. It is such just a snap of a finger in the time that humans have been on this earth. And so it's such a small blimp in time. And so I saw stuff about, it was talking about root canals in the 1700s, and then it became a little bit more popular in the 1800s. And then really around the 1940s is when it was like more of a popular practice.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, okay, the 1940s, maybe a lot of people who were at the beginning stages of getting these root canal procedures have started to pass on, or maybe they passed on of these degenerative diseases and didn't put two and two together at that point. And, them passing of old age or like, the cancers, the Alzheimer's, dementia, these things. And yeah, just not knowing like it being such, it makes me feel tender that people might have they don't have a clue. And so hopefully we can use this podcast as a catalyst to start to give some clues. And so people can kind of follow the breadcrumbs like you did. You were able to spirit led and listen to your body and your own intuition, like your tooth throbbing is like, that's like a huge sign. Like you said, look, location wise, it's like these other health things you were dealing with. And then it was like right here. And there's so many people who are kind of, because we're living in a time of such distraction and sickness, and people just aren't awakening to the whispers of their body. So they might not know, right? There's so many people eating such highly processed foods and foods that really keep the vibrational state low. And when the vibrational state is low, then we have sicknesses that can manifest, right? There's so much to sickness, and people talking about genetic things, right? And so there's so many, quote unquote, genetic markers for things, but it's like just because you have a genetic marker doesn't mean something is going to manifest in your life. But if you are living in a life with the high toxic load from the food you eat to the clothes you wear to the things that you do, whatever you're surrounding yourself with, like, yeah, sicknesses, I don't know, things are going to start coming up for people. And so, yeah, anyway, I feel like we're kind of going to be in the time where there's so much chronic disease out there that I hope that people start waking up to this being the breadcrumb, maybe to lead them to their healing. And I'm so glad it was your breadcrumb leading to so much healing for you.
Me too. Yeah, we're in this time of epigenetics. Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about epigenetics a lot. And so, really, just knowing that mentally we can change the way that our genes express themselves. And that's really powerful because we are not destined by what our parents have. We're not destined by what our genetic markers say in our blood analysis tests. And I love what you said about how, almost in a way, innocent standard dentists are. And I'm not saying that, oh, they're all innocent, but no one ever really gets into a field like this. I even think, especially dentistry, because they want to get rich. It's not like the most expansive financial. I mean, you can make a good income, so I'm not saying that, but I don't think people become a dentist because they want to make millions of dollars, right?
Right.
They do it because they want to help people. And it's such a hard pill to swallow for them to see that the procedures that they were taught and the things that they could actually maybe be potentially harmful. And, like you said, root canal procedures got really, really popular in the 1950s. And it takes about 50 years for us to see how the human body will respond to something long term. So we're now in that time period where we're starting to see the repercussions of these procedures that not only dentists, but medically are these procedures that our doctors are doing, and the health implications that we could have on our bodies. So we're really in that time where this information is more important now than ever for it to come out and for us to really take a stand for our health and say, no, I actually don't want this done to me. And what was really interesting for me that I learned as well is when you have this high risk bacteria in your mouth, it's not isolated to your mouth. Whatever I touch with my mouth, that bacteria is being exposed to. So, Amber, I'm sorry, but if I ever shared a drink with you, you were exposed to that high risk bacteria. Now, your body isn't going to be as prominent of a breeding ground for this bacteria because you're not going to have an active infection site for it to have a dance party in, like mine was. And so this bacteria probably isn't going to live very long in your life or in your body. But what was really honestly disgusting and shocking for me, and what really made me move forward even quicker into this path of getting my root canals taken out, is at the time my daughter was 16 months old and I was still breastfeeding her on demand, and I kiss her like a million times a day. And she's being exposed to that bacteria. And she's a little 16-month-old baby who her immune system is developing, and she's constantly being exposed to this unhealthy, high risk bacteria. And same with my husband. Every time I would kiss him or we would share a meal or share a drink together, he was getting exposed to that same bacteria. So I had this realization that I'm not only harming myself in this process, but I'm actively biologically harming my daughter and husband in this process. So, that was a huge priority for me to get that done. And it's not, an inexpensive procedure to have done. To be completely transparent, it cost me $20,000, through a year's process to get everything done. And I'm finally having the end stage of it come up on March 6th, where I'm getting my permanent crowns placed. And I still don't even have my permanent crowns in, so I'm still actively in the process of, this root canal journey that I've been on. And I'm very excited for it to be over here very soon.
Well, I'm sure people are wondering, what was the process like? Because I know for you, there's been multiple appointments and multiple procedures. And, I didn't even realize you didn't have your final crowns on yet, and that there's still another piece of this.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us about treatments and all of that and the different procedures you had to undergo? Perfect.
Well, yeah, my personal experience with the root canal removal surgery was really profound. Preparing for my surgery involved, regulating my nervous system a lot. Like we talked about the reparenting of my inner child, mentally preparing for the procedure. On the day of the surgery, I literally was supported with energy work from my holistic biological dentist. She was doing Reiki on me as I was receiving my anesthesia, which is incredible, and she played healing frequencies for me in the background. I also got a vitamin C IV to really help with my immune system, just detoxing and getting rid of all of the bacteria that my body was exposed to. And the recovery for me was surprisingly smooth. I had minimal pain. I actually really had no pain after getting my two front teeth taken out. And the biggest part for me was the mental work it took versus the physical work that it took to heal from this and to prepare for it. So I worked for months prior and talking myself off the ledge of quitting, holding and reminding myself that I am safe and just really edging deeper into that discomfort. Weeks before the surgery, I would have anxious moments of like, oh my God, am I really going to get my two front teeth pulled out of my head? That's a huge thing to do. The night before the surgery, I hardly slept. I cried in the car on my way to the office. And when I got there, I went to the bathroom and I did breath work before going back to the dental chair. And I recited my prayers as they were preparing for all of the tools to the dental chair. And like I said, my dentist did energy work on me throughout the whole experience. And she gave me a warm neck pillow throughout. Like she would change out this neck pillow so it would stay warm. And they put a blanket over me. And she would remind me to breathe deeply and would gently touch my shoulders when I would tense up, because she could feel like, when my body would tense up. And just that soft, gentle touch was just like it was like a mother's touch of like, you're okay. Like, I've got you. I know what I'm doing. You're safe and you're held. And this is a sacred space. And she even prepped me. She said, if you need to cry, if you need to feel, like, let it all go. We can take as much time as you need. They blocked out 3 hours for the surgery, which, really only took like 45 minutes, but they really wanted to be able to give me the time to process, because it really is such an emotional process, and our teeth hold memory. And so I was transported back into the day where I broke my two front teeth, and not having my mom there to hold me and love me and support me and comfort me. I was essentially, at the time, I was with strangers and didn't get immediate care afterwards. So there was so much fear that was trapped inside my two front teeth. And to have those pulled out and removed, that fear was like brought to the surface even more. And, every couple of minutes, I could literally feel my knees vibrating and the energy of the trauma and the infection moving out and down my body. It was such an etheric experience, and it was a true release, a physical healing made manifest, and the trauma officially being freed from my body. It was really powerful. And when the local anesthesia wore off, I was actually really surprised at how little pain I was feeling. And, I even asked my dentist before I left the office, I was like, is this normal? Like, is my nerve broken? Is that why I'm not feeling pain? And, surprisingly, she said, yes, it's actually very common. And, she actually doesn't offer pain medications in her office because most of her clients don't need them. So instead, she gave me arnica and a red light therapy device. And that was the only pain management that I had after my teeth removal. And a whole week later, I can say that I had zero pain post surgery. And, it's, of course, it's a little bit achy and you got to be careful with what you eat. And you don't want to put pressure on it. And when you brush your teeth, you got to be soft and gentle. But this was such a much more smooth and graceful experience than I imagined. And how I prepared for my surgery 2 weeks prior was also very meticulous. I made sure that I had really good sleep hygiene, a very balanced, high nutrient dense diet and protein and calcium. I didn't eat any processed sugars or foods. Made sure that, I was extremely hydrated, would add minerals back into my water, and would take daily supplements of vitamin C and K2 and magnesium and D3 and EPH or DHA and EPA, and would have a high quality grass fed collagen, and would pray and meditate and just really offer spaces for my nervous system to relax. And I did a lot of emotion code release, which is where you take different magnets on the body and you move them up and down the spine while you're actively thinking of a traumatic experience. So the magnetism of the magnets will help release it from your body, and did a lot of EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. I also went in a week prior and did a pre-surgery IV just to make sure that my cells were properly hydrated. And I took Ignatia, the homeopathy Ignatia for nerves, and took a lot of arnica before and post-surgery as well. And during my surgery, like I said, I had the vitamin C IV. They took a blood draw so that they could have my plasma to put on the healing site so that I had the plasma for the healing, which is great. And then would use my red light therapy device for pain management. And they have an ozone machine in the office, so they gave me a ton of ozone treatment and ozone water. They also have a neurotherapy device in their office, so you could get neurotherapy, which is great for balancing your nervous system. And yeah, just really leaned on my prayer practice during this time as well. So
Wow, Cassidy, that sounds like a really incredible experience in so many ways and a huge experience. And I'm just like in awe of it all. And now you're sitting there with your two front teeth removed. And I think we're all just kind of waiting. What was the next step after you? So you got your canals removed, your two front teeth are gone. You had this amazing holistic experience with all these amazing supports that your holistic biological dentist was able to give, and that you were able to give yourself in the post treatment and the pre treatment and during the treatment. And so then what happens?
yeah, so my treatment plan was originally going to be to get my two front teeth removed and my implants put in the same day, as long as I had enough bone stability. They weren't going to know whether or not I could get my implants put in the same day until they removed the teeth, and they could check the bone stability with different tools that they have in office to really determine that. But we had planned that out for that to happen in that appointment. Now, it actually turned out that the infection had ate away so much of my bone that I could not get my implants the same day. And I had to schedule 8 weeks out from this appointment to get my implants put in. So I had an 8 week healing period. And of course, I wasn't just walking around toothless. They glued
Like
in.
a 5-year-old?
Yeah, singing the song. all I want for Christmas is my toothbrush. But they did glue in a bridge. So I actually still have that same bridge glued in today because I'm going in 2 weeks to get my permanent crowns glued on. So I got my two front teeth removed. 8 weeks later, I had an 8 week healing period where I would go back and get my implants secured after the bone stability and, the bone had grown back and the bone stability was at 80 to 100%.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Yeah, of course.
So the infection eating at the bones of your teeth, when you say it was eating at the bones of your teeth, it was the other bones around like the teeth that you had to get pulled, or was it the actual tooth? Because I know a root canal, they dig up and they
Mhm.
get the infection out. Then you had a root canal removal. So they had to pull your two front teeth. Is that right? Or
Yeah. So if you think about, like, if you can imagine an x ray of the jawbone and then maybe your nose and the sinus cavity, the infection was way up there. So it was eating away up towards my sinus cavity. So
oh,
who
okay.
knows? If maybe in 20 years, it would have ate away through my sinus cavity and that would have been a whole nother issue. We don't know. I don't really know, like, if the body is going to allow that to happen
Mm-hmm.
because the body is so intelligent, of course. But that's the direction it was heading, was up towards my sinus cavity. So thank God we caught it at the 20-year mark and it wasn't, as significant as it probably could have been in my 80s. But this is why these infections can cause so many issues down the road and why we're seeing like 60, 70, 80-year-olds having so many dental problems with root canals in their mouths.
Yeah, that's okay. So the bone is the bone of like your like
The
jawbone
jawbone.
or
Yeah.
okay, so
The
it was
actual
eating away
jawbone.
at that bone, not like the bones of your teeth being a bone and not like the neighboring teeth. It was the jawbone because essentially when they put in your permanent crowns or teeth, they need to be able to drill it into your jawbone. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So the infection starts in the tooth itself because the tooth is dead. Then, when that bacteria is having a party for long enough, it's going to expand and grow. So the infection left my tooth. When I actually got my two front teeth pulled out, I still have them. I plan on doing a ritual, a bury ritual, where I want to plant the teeth with a tree and have a whole ceremony of just like, saying goodbye to this part of my life and having that be the end part of this rite of passage with my whole two front teeth that I've dealt with my whole life. But on those two front teeth, one day maybe you can do that ritual with me, Amber, but you can see on the teeth the black around the root of my tooth. And that is where, because the infection starts on the inside of the tooth. You can't see the infection at first. Then it goes to the outside part of the tooth, and then it expands into the jawbone. So this takes an incredibly long time to happen. This just doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen in 5 years. This was 20 years in the making for this infection to get that bad. I got my root canals when I was 8. So, it was 20 years exactly almost that I had this
Wow.
infection cultivating itself in my tooth and then eventually into my jawbone.
And this is why so many people don't realize, right? Because I feel like a lot of people get root canals when they're a little bit older.
Hmm.
Like maybe they're like in their 20s or 30s or something like that. And people get root canals at all ages. So it's not like based on that. But a lot of times I feel like people are getting it in their a little bit older years. And so of course their infection might not seemingly be bad from the outside because it hasn't moved to that. It's just going on internally. And this is why it's this silent, mysterious thing causing these chronic illnesses that people aren't putting the connection to because they have no idea. Because when they see a conventional dentist, they're like, looks great. Because from the outside, it looks great. And they're not actually testing for the bacteria. And even if they look at a x-ray, right, like a conventional dentist, they can't see the infection. Is that right?
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have the CBCT scan, the cone beam scan, because that is essentially a live x-ray. So they can go in and see the movement of everything. They can see, when I looked at that CBTC scan, I could see the bacteria moving in my mouth in this black area of where the infection was, where I should have had bone and I should have had a tooth, but instead it was a pocket of infection. So that's why the cone beam scan can be so insightful and why I end up using it for this purpose. So yeah, a regular dentist is just going to take a regular panoramic x-ray, and that doesn't show what you need to see in a cone beam scan. That's the difference with that.
It's so terrifying and sad because so many people just literally zero clue.
I know.
Again, they would have to hear a podcast or see the documentary or something to kind of enlighten them that this is a potential. And when you got your root canals from your conventional dentist, did they tell you in future your mouth might in future it will start to come infected, and we're going to have to address these later, but right now here's just like the placement of no, they were like,
no, they did not say that at all. And it's unfortunate because most dentists don't believe that. They truly don't believe that. That's not what they were taught. That's not what they were told. And, I feel like if they believed that to my core, I believe in humanity, that they wouldn't perform these procedures. I mean, if I was a dentist and I knew that it could cause long-term degenerative health issues in my patients, I would not perform a procedure like that, which is why we're seeing so many dentists convert to holistic dentistry, or we're seeing so many people come into holistic dentistry in the beginning because this research is starting to come out. We're now at that time, 50, 60, 70 years later, where we're starting to see all the implications of a root canal infection. And so yeah, I was not told that this would be a potential to my health. I was not told that it would cause autoimmune issues my whole life. I was not told any of that. And I firmly believe that my dentist didn't know and didn't believe it either.
Yeah. And there's so many dentists that just don't know because, again, they are taught the procedures they're taught and they're thinking that those are the best practices.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your healing journey. So you had an 8-week healing journey. How was that for you? And then you've got your bridges, you said, glued on more permanently. Yep. Those are the ones that you have in now.
Yep.
And then what were your steps after that? Because I know there's more steps to come.
Yep. So I got my 2 front teeth removed. The plan was to get zirconium implants in. So remember that name, zirconium. It's very important. You do not want to get titanium implants. Titanium is a metal and it's extremely less beneficial for the body. Usually, I'm not going to say all the time, but usually the body has a hard time accepting and rejects metals in the body. So zirconium is equivalent or mimics the actual like porcelain, and which mimics bone in the body. So there's a lot more successful healing and a lot quicker healing with zirconium implants. So it's important to make sure that wherever you go, you're getting zirconium and not titanium.
Is there a cost difference? Is that why there's some people do titanium and some people do zirconium?
There probably is. I'm not educated on that. I just knew I was going to get zirconium. I had no doubt about it. And I didn't even want to know what the titanium. So I never got a quote for the titanium, but I would assume that's probably a little bit more expensive, but maybe it's not.
So some people just choose titanium because
their doctor tells them to be honest.
Okay. So your doctor had that as an option, but you already had a plan because you already did your research prior.
I don't even think my holistic biological dentist uses titanium. I think she avoids it. So I wasn't even given the option either for that. So yeah, I had an 8-week healing period after I got my 2 front teeth removed. And then I would go back after the 8 weeks to get my implants secured. And the original dental plan was supposed to be 8 months, but I'm getting my permanent crowns on in 2 weeks. That makes it 11 to 12 months for me. So this process could be a lot quicker for someone depending on their own personal schedule. I have a 2-year-old, so there's a dance around childcare with this sort of stuff. And it also depends on the actual dentist schedule and personal healing times is a big factor as well. But, I was given a temporary bridge that was glued on to my lateral incisors for this transition period to getting my permanent crowns on. And I will say I'm very happy with myself because the bridge only fell off once in that 8-week healing period, which if you go to my Instagram, you can see me just having a really fun time with not having front teeth. And that happened because I didn't wear my retainer for the first 2 weeks post surgery. And when I put it back on, it was just slightly off and it just popped that glue off of my two front teeth. So luckily I had my retainer. It was over the weekend, so I was able to put the bridge inside the retainer and wear my retainer. So I didn't have to go the weekend without two front teeth. And I'm explaining this because you always have options. I don't think anyone will ever go toothless during the process, even if your glued bridge comes off. And, there was a gap in between like the healing portion and where they had glued on my teeth. And that was due to the infection eating away at my bone. And so I asked my dentist about it, and she said that that's completely normal. As the bone grows back, I'll actually see my gum line come back down. And it was so cool because at the 5-week mark post surgery, I actually saw that like I didn't have that gap anymore in between my bridge. And so I just love having tangible results like that and feeling it within my body. Like, wow, my body is actually healing. This process is so intelligent and my body is so capable of doing this. Because, there's a doubt of like, what if something goes wrong? I initially had this fear of when I got my implants in, that when she was screwing the implants in, that my skull would just crack, that like my body couldn't take the pressure. But it was just really, it's powerful to see what the body does best, which is heal itself. And so to go into my implantation surgery after that 8-week period, this was the big one for me. Getting the teeth removed from the body, especially something that the body doesn't want there, was way more easeful for me than getting something foreign screwed into my skull. Like if you think of woodworking and hearing the noise of the wood while you're screwing in a screw, like that creaking noise, that was the same noise that I heard going on in my head during the surgery. It was really intense. But even prepping the night before the surgery was way more intense for me as well than the first surgery. I could not relax. I was restless. I couldn't sleep. I had to like get up and walk around my house at like 3 a.m. and breathe because I was just so anxious. And my mind was racing with these intrusive thoughts. Like I told you, like I thought my skull was going to crack because of the pressure of screwing in the implants, and the idea of getting something screwed into my head scared me so badly. I think it would scare anybody. I was just so worried. But luckily, holistic biological dentists have this whole understanding of this type of dental anxiety. And my holistic biological dentist, she's a female. So she really she has that feminine touch. She's also a mom. So she has that mother touch. And it was so nice for her to offer that feminine mother state of mind for me because it just eased and helped regulate my nervous system during both surgeries. But especially, I just remember being really grateful for her touch, just like touching my shoulder and just telling me to breathe and just feeling like in a way she was my mom in that moment, just taking care of me and holding my hand during something really scary. And, it was helpful for me to ask questions throughout the whole process and gain a clearer understanding of everything. And she was so open to me just saying, okay, wait, stop. Can I ask a question? Like, what would happen if this would happen? Or what's the rate of my skull cracking in half? And of course she takes it seriously, but there's also this lightheartedness to her about it of like, hardly any. So, you know, she walked me through every step, which was so helpful for me because I felt like that provided me with such a deeper trust in the process. And
Yeah.
by the way, they drill into the bone before they start torquing with the implant. In woodworking, they call it countersinking. So you're not just like going in there free-handedly, just like trying to figure it out. So she drilled a small hole into my bone first, and then she put the implant in and would torque.
Mm.
Because it's just much more easeful for the bone to receive it that way.
And so you were awake clearly because you were asking questions and you could say stop for a moment if you needed to. Was there any sort of sedation, numbing? Like there had to be, right? Because she's screwing into your jaw.
Yeah, I was on local anesthesia, which is just injection anesthetic in the local part. And honestly, she had to give me like 4 doses of it because there would be times where I would get my feeling back just a little bit and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to need you to top me off here. So she was super accommodating to that as well. And I think also because I was just a little bit more anxious, I was probably burning through it a little bit quicker than most people probably would. But, the recovery of the surgery was much different than the extraction surgery for me. This was very painful initially. I had to sit in the dental chair for a little while until the massive amount of pressure and discomfort in my sinus and my bone was released. And even then, when I left, it still wasn't as comfortable as I wish it would have been on my drive home. And I'll say before I left the dental office, which I never do this, Amber, I never do this. I had to take 2 Tylenol. And, that literally just held me off on my drive home, which when I got home, I just went straight to sleep. But when I woke up 2 hours later, after I got home from my nap, I will say all the pain subsided. The pressure had been released and I was able to fully recover and focus on healing after that. I almost had very minimal pain after I took that nap. So it just goes to show how when you're in that deep restorative sleep state, the body heals and it does what it needs to do. And that pressure was relieved. So highly recommend taking a nap after any surgery because your body probably naturally wants to do. And after that, I actually didn't feel the need for any more pain management beyond that. And I did continue to take Arnica 200 every 4 hours and use my red light therapy device daily again. But I knew at that point I could take a deep breath and that the hardest parts were over. And I started celebrating and focusing on fully releasing the infection from my body because it's not completely gone at that point. They go in and they do ozone and they did several other tools with laser therapy and all this other stuff to get the infection out as much as they could. But at that point, the infection and the bacteria was in my bloodstream. It passed the blood-brain barrier at that point. And so I needed to do a really heavy, full detox, which I ended up doing in the later months, which I'm really grateful that I did that as well. But, at that point, after my surgery, I just wanted to wait until November when the fun part was here and I got to start doing all the prep for my crowns, which, like I said, I just had my last appointment with them 2 weeks ago and we did all the prep to get the scan undertaken and we did the whitening of the teeth matching and the designing of my two front teeth. And then I get those put on in 2 weeks, which I'm very excited for. And that's a non-invasive surgery. They're just gonna, take the glue off of this bridge, pop the bridge out, which is painless, and then cement on those permanent crowns for me, which is very exciting.
Yay. So your bridge is not like screwed into your jaw, or is it like the bridge? Is it connected to where she drilled or?
Yeah, to give you a picture, two front teeth are removed, bone is healed. Implantation surgery is two posts are then torqued and drilled in to my skull. So think of like walrus teeth, just two long rods pretty much sticking out. Then they took an impression of that and they made teeth that would form over those two rods. And that's what you see in my mouth today. These aren't glued on to the implants. This bridge is glued on to my two lateral incisors, so the teeth next
Okay.
to it. So you can kind of see I can't floss in between my two front teeth and my two incisors yet. So these two front four teeth, I can't floss because there's glue in between each of them. Now, when I get my permanent crowns on, that's going to be different because the crown is going to be cemented onto the actual implant. So then I'll be able to go in. I'm really looking forward to it. I love flossing. Twice a
Me
day.
too.
We went camping and I brought my floss with me,
Floss is just, I was just telling my students. So, for those of you that don't know, I teach fourth grade, and I was just telling them the importance of flossing and dental
Mhm.
health and how we really need to take care of our teeth. And I remember when I was in college, I was taking a health class. And in this health class, they talked about the power of flossing and that the
Oh,
research shows that flossing can actually extend your lifespan by
yes.
3 years. So when I heard that data and that statistic, I was like, wow, why wouldn't anyone floss? If we can extend our lifetime by just a few years, why not? So, and of
Exactly.
course, it feels so good because there's all sorts of things that get stuck when we're eating food. And so that's the way to get it out because brushing does not get into all the nooks and crannies and all the things stuck. And so, for me, if I don't floss, yeah, it doesn't feel good. It's like I have to floss every night before I
Yeah.
brush my teeth, and it feels so good to do. So I bet you are looking forward to just being able to finally get between those teeth.
Mm.
But the glue, does that block food from getting in? And did you have to make any dietary changes because, like, can you not eat certain foods due to the glue?
That's a really good question. My whole life, even when you have permanent crowns cemented on, like when I got my permanent crown cemented on in high school, had those up until last year, you're still told you can't bite into an apple. You can't really use your two front teeth for hard, like jaw biting foods. So the way that my mouth is designed now when I eat, I don't put pressure on my two front teeth most of the like if I'm eating a burrito or a sandwich, that's fine because it's a lot of soft foods. But like chomping into an apple with your two front teeth is a no-no, even with permanent crowns. I've always used my bottom teeth to direct a lot of that pressure. And then most of every like apples I always eat cut up.
Nice.
I never just bite into an apple. So it wasn't much of a difference for me to have to adjust to that sort of like eating mindset of not a lot of pressure in the two front teeth. I didn't have any restrictions with what I eat for the most part, just a really high nutrient dense diet, really focused on protein and calcium and K2 to help rebuild that bone where the infection ate away at it. But that's really the only adjustments that I did. And, I wish my fourth grade teacher talked to me about how important flossing is because it is. Our mouth is connected to every part of our body. Different parts of our body are connected to different parts of our mouth. It's called tooth mapping and health connections. And my holistic biological dentist told me about this as well. How each tooth is connected to different parts of the body through different energy pathways. And your two front teeth, for me, for example, are linked to the kidneys and the bladder and the pineal gland. And I thought that was really interesting because when my daughter was born, we discovered that she had a duplex system in her left kidney. And so I was so interested about how potentially this infection in my body could have influenced the way that my baby grew inside my
Mhm.
body through that energy pathway. So it's worth exploring a tooth map if you have any issues in your mouth to see if any of the symptoms you're experiencing might be related to your dental issues, because it can be really insightful. There's a lot of, you can just quickly Google tooth map on Google and find something for you to look at if you're interested in that.
So it's very much like reflexology in a way where your feet are connected to all parts of your body, your hands, and yeah, all these meridians and these pathways. And that's very traditional Chinese medicine
Yeah.
related, right?
Yeah. So what I also want to talk about is, a question that kept coming up for me initially when I started down this journey was how can I identify myself if I have a root canal infection? And that's probably a lot of questions that people are asking themselves as well. And it can be really hard because root canal infections are hard to detect because the nerve in the tooth is already dead. So there's not going to be a lot of pain or sensation normally associated with what we know as a traditional infection in the body. However, there are a few signs to look for that I've noticed within myself that really helps me determine and follow my intuition that, okay, I do have a root canal infection and I want to explore this deeper. So one was like my unexplained health issues. I had chronic illness like strep throat, chronic severe in my early 20s. I had migraines, like ocular migraines, where I would go blind in one or both of my eyes, and it would end up in like a vomiting pattern for me. I would have bladder issues. I would have fevers, swollen lymph nodes in my neck and in my throat and in my, like right behind my ears. You can look for toothaches or like a bad breath or like a smell coming from maybe your crown placement. If you have food allergies, IBS is also a really good sign of a tooth infection. Sinus issues is another really good sign. If you have chemical sensitivities or autoimmune diseases, diabetes is actually one of the leading symptoms within tooth infections.
So type
Lyme disease,
2.
type 1 and type 2, which
Oh,
is interesting.
interesting.
Yeah. Yep. And then Lyme's disease, heart disease, and much more could be linked to root canal infections.
I mean, those are all like the big chronic things that people are dealing with today.
Yeah.
And so many people, again, no clue what their root cause is.
Yeah.
And so if they have done a root canal surgery, this could potentially be their root cause, especially if they cleaned up all the other areas in their life, from the food they eat to the products they use to just everything. So if they've cleaned up everything and they're eating well and, treating their body well, and it's still occurring for them, these issues, that this could be a big sign that it might be your root canal infection. It might be an oral
Exactly.
infection.
Yeah. I read a study, and this is coming off the top of my head, so I don't have the research in front of me. So don't hold it against me if it's wrong. But I read that breast cancer is like 90% associated to an infection in our mouth. And that they did a study, and it was like 80 to 90% of women that had breast cancer had an infection in their mouth on the same side that they had their breast cancer. And so people don't correlate heart disease, cancer, chemical sensitivities with their mouth.
Hmm.
But our mouth is so important. It holds so much health within our body. So unexplained health issues is the first sign that you can look for. If you have an unexplained health issue, if your doctor is like, I don't really know where this is coming from exactly, it could be an infection in your mouth. The second symptom you can look for is actual physical symptoms. So you can look for signs of black and gray coloration along your gum line. I'm going to tell you, if you have black and gray coloration along your gum line, you for sure have an infection. That tooth is dead, it is rotting, and what happens after that? You're going to have bacteria harbor in that area. So I see a lot of people, especially older people, who have black and gray coloration along their gum lines. And now that when you look at that, know that that person has an infection in their body. I had black and gray coloration along my gum line. So when I smiled really big, you could notice that black and gray coloration along my gum line in front of my two front teeth. And I look back at some pictures that I have, and you could very easily see it in pictures as well. So that's
But you can't
probably
see that anymore, right?
no, my gums are so pink and so healthy and so vibrant now. It's a completely different look to my smile and my energy and how I show up in that space as well. And then you can also look for unusual smells or like a subtle throbbing sensation in the teeth, which I also had both of those whenever I would floss in between my two front teeth. It didn't smell clean. And then at nighttime, I would have those throbbing sensations in the two front teeth as well, which is really what pulsed me forward into finding a dentist. Now, the last symptom that I want to talk about is it's not really a symptom. It's just the truth. And it's an inevitable truth is that due to the porous nature of the teeth, I'm sorry to say, but it's really not a matter of if your root canals are going to get infected. So I don't want people to go out and think, oh, I could be the one where I have a root canal and it won't ever get infected. I'm sorry, but that's just not the truth. But it's a matter of when. It's a matter of when your teeth are going to get infected. These teeth are dead. They are porous. If you leave a dead part of your body in your body, there's gonna be bacteria that harbors. When bacteria harbors, that creates an infection. So, like I said, that's not really a symptom, but it's the hard truth, and it's something that I really had to sit with when I first was going through all of this information and taking it in. My dentist was shocked that my infection necessarily wasn't as bad as it could have been after it being 20 years. But I had a chemical sensitivity my whole life. And it's because of this infection that I had in my body. My immune system was constantly suppressed every day. And so I've taken every precaution to ensure my toxic load is zero or extremely minimal with my nutrition and just using the highest quality products as possible. And this truly has been my health insurance, I feel like, throughout my life. I brush my teeth twice a day. I rinsed my mouth with mouthwash every day. I flossed twice a day. So you can imagine I took extreme, impeccable care of my mouth, and I still had an infection that was eating away at the bone in my body. And my toxic load was very low. So I'm stressing on this because I would have been the person, and I was the person that told myself, I'm the person that's going to get away with not having an infection because of all of these health things that I do every day. So with that sort of effort that I put into my daily protocols and my daily routines, I'm sure we can imagine how significant it could be for people who aren't as aware, who don't have, as toxic of a load in their life than what I was intuitively guided towards. So my final thoughts are, if you are considering removing your root canals, I want you to know, and I want you to take a deep breath into the strength that is within you to do so. And I want you to know that it is a significant step towards bettering your health and well-being. And that if you want to live a life that gives you back more, you have to show up for it. And this journey is going to be challenging, and it's also going to be so extremely enlightening and rewarding. And I just hope that my story inspires those who are feeling the call to take charge of their health as well. Because remember, we all have the right to heal and thrive. And my three most pivotal resources for this topic are the documentary Root Cause. You can watch it on Unified TV. The book, The Toxic Tooth, How a Root Canal Can Be Making You Sick by Dr. Robert Kolzak. I'm not sure if I'm actually saying his last name correctly. And then the podcast, The Voltage in Our Bodies with Dr. Jerry Tennant on Super Life with Darren Olian. Love that podcast. Super insightful. These three resources alone changed my life and what really guided me towards making this change.
And we will put those in the show notes for you. So you can just click the links, very easeful, if you are interested in doing that further research and that deeper dive. And thank you so much, Cassidy, for sharing your wisdom and your experience. And it's just such an amazing journey, the reclamation of health that you've had. And I'm excited for you and your body, and to continue watching you just blossom into the woman that you are and the woman that you're stepping into. And yeah, I'm excited to see how the further healing that your body will have. And for these other issues that you've had, that you've expressed, that are so frustrating, for those to just dissipate. I just believe they're just going to dissipate because our bodies are these amazing healing systems. And you've taken into your hands, you've taken your health into your hands. And so beautiful. And I'm sure listeners are wondering, where can they find you if they want to see your stories about your dental health or just know a bit more about your life? And then if there's anything that you have coming up.
Yeah, thank you. It's been such a journey and such a privilege to get to be able to sit with you and talk with you today, and to even recall my experience myself and just how much actually goes into it, because it is a significant journey and it's one to be celebrated. And I will say, within the last year, I have had some very significant health issues dissipate, which is something that I am just so excited about. I had chronic eczema during my first pregnancy with my daughter, and that's now gone. And I used to be extremely food intolerant. I mean, I was a vegan for 10 years because I couldn't handle a lot of the foods, that dairy, and, I had a leaky gut symptom, and that's all been gone. So I can pretty much eat whatever I want, which is just such a freedom to feel in your body anyway. And people can find me and my story and follow along a little bit more, or become my friend. Come hang out with me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at From Cassidy, FromCassidy. And I don't think I have anything additional to say beyond that, other than, we have the right to heal. And I'm so excited to just see people thrive and take their health into their hands more. And if you feel that this has inspired you in any way, I would love to hear from you. So please reach out.
Thank you so much, Cassidy. Love you.
Love you too. Thank you.
Thank you for walking this path of holistic wellness and mindful living with me. I hope today's discussion planted seeds in the hearts of those that need it most and has inspired you in some way. If you found value in our conversation, please consider subscribing to the Sacred Right podcast and leaving a review. It really helps this podcast reach more listeners, and I would be so grateful. I would love to connect over social media. My Instagram handle is @sacred.right. There you can stay up to date on upcoming episodes, current offerings, and small batch releases of our handmade botanical remedies. I will leave any relevant links from today's episode in the show notes. The music in this podcast is from an incredible musician and a dear sister of mine, Satori Key. Be sure to check out her music on all major platforms. Her medicine music is transformative and deeply healing and has truly changed my life. Tune in next time. Until then, nurture your body and soul, and remember, it's your sacred right.